If you ask, if such extraordinary impossibilities and insurmountable difficulties occur when beings are attributed to nature, how are those difficulties removed when they are attributed to the single and eternally besought one? And how is the difficult impossibility transformed that easily by necessity? The answer: we saw in the first impossibility that the manifestation of the sun's reflection displays its radiance and effect through miniature imaginary suns with complete ease and lack of trouble in everything, from the minutest inanimate particle to the surface of the vastest ocean. If each particle's relationship with the sun is severed, it then becomes necessary to accept that the external existence of an actual sun could subsist, with a difficulty at the level of impossibility, in each of those minute particles. Similarly, if each being is ascribed directly to the single and eternally besought one, everything necessary for each being can be conveyed to it through a connection and manifestation with an ease and faculty that is at the level of necessity. If the connection is severed, and each being reverts from its position as an official to being without duties, and is left to nature and its own devices, it then becomes necessary to suppose that, with 100,000 difficulties and obstacles that reach the degree of impossibility, blind nature possesses within it a power and wisdom with which to create and administer the universe, so that it might bring into existence the wonderful machine of the being of an animate creature like a fly, which is a tiny index of the universe. This is impossible, not just once, but thousands of times over. In short, just as it is impossible and precluded for the necessarily existent one to have any partner or like in respect of his essence, so too is the interference of others in his dominicality and his creation of beings impossible and precluded. As for the difficulties involved in the second impossibility, if all things are attributed to the single one of unity, all things become as easy and trouble-free as a single thing. Whereas, if they are attributed to causes in nature, a single thing becomes as difficult as all things. This has been demonstrated with numerous decisive proofs, and summary of one of them is as follows. If a man is connected to a king through being a soldier or an official, by reason of the strength of that connection, he may perform duties far exceeding his own individual strength. He may, on occasion, capture another king in the name of his own king, for he himself does not carry the equipment and sources of strength necessary to carry out the duties and work he performs, nor is he compelled to do so. By reason of the connection, the king's treasuries and the army, which is behind him and his point of support, carry his equipment and sources of strength. That is to say, the duties he performs may be as grand as the business of a king, and as tremendous as the actions of an army. Indeed, through the connection, the seed of a pine the size of a grain of wheat produces all the parts of a huge pine tree. Yes, on there being this connection, the seed receives an order from divine determining and displays those wonderful duties. Should the connection be severed, the creation of the seed would require more equipment, power, and art than the creation of the mighty pine tree, for it would be necessary for the pine tree out there on the mountain, which is the work of divine power, to be physically present together with all its limbs and parts in what is only the potential tree within the seed and is the work of divine determining. For the mighty tree's factory is the seed. The determined potential tree within it becomes manifest in the external world through divine power and becomes a physical pine tree. Were the connection to be severed and man discharged from his duties as an official, he would be compelled to carry the equipment and sources of strength necessary for his work himself. He would then only be able to perform the duties in accordance with the sources of strength and ammunition that he was able to carry. If he was required in this situation to carry out his duties with the extreme ease of the first situation, it would be necessary to load on his back the sources of an army's strength and the arsenals and munitions factories of a king. Even clowns who invent stories and superstitions to make people laugh would be ashamed at this fanciful idea. In short, To attribute all beings to the necessarily existent one is so easy as to be necessary, while to attribute their creation to nature is so difficult as to be impossible and outside the realm of reason. Third impossibility. The following two comparisons explain this impossibility. A wild savage entered a palace which had been built in an empty desert and completed and adorned with all the fruits of civilization. He cast an eye over its interior and saw thousands of well-ordered and artistically fashioned objects. Because of his boorishness and lack of intelligence, he said, "No one from outside had a hand in this. One of the objects from inside must have made this palace together with all its contents," and started to investigate. However, whatever he looked at, even his untaught intelligence could not fathom out how it had made those things. Later, he saw a notebook in which had been written the plan and program of the palace's construction, an index of its contents and the rules of its administration. For sure, the notebook too, which was without hand, eye or implement, like the rest of the objects in the palace, was completely lacking the ability to construct and decorate the palace. But since he saw that in comparison with all the other things, the notebook was related to the whole palace by reason of its including all its theoretical laws, he was obliged to say, "There it is this notebook that has organised, ordered and adorned this palace, and has fashioned all these objects and set them in their places." He transformed his uncouthness into ludicrous jabber. Thus, exactly like this comparison, a boor who subscribed to naturalist thought entered the palace of the universe, which is infinitely more well-ordered, more perfect, and everywhere full of miraculous instances of wisdom than the palace in the comparison. Not thinking that it was the work of art of the necessarily existent one, who was outside the sphere of contingency, and shunning that idea, he saw a collection of laws of divine practice and an index of dominical art, which are like a slate for writing and erasing of divine determining in the sphere of contingency, and like a constantly changing notebook, the laws of functioning of divine power, and are extremely mistakenly and erroneously given the name nature. And he said, "These things require a cause, and nothing else appears to have a relationship with everything like this notebook has. It is true that reason will in no way accept this unseeing, unconscious, and powerless notebook could carry out this creation, which is the work of an absolute dominicality and requires infinite power. But since I do not recognize the eternal Maker, the most plausible explanation is to say the notebook made it, and makes it, so I shall say that." To which we reply, "Are you mistaken, unfortunate? Your foolishness exceeds anything imaginable. Lift your head out of the swamp of nature and look beyond yourself. See an all-glorious Maker to whom all beings from particles to planets testify with their different tongues and whom they indicate with their fingers. Behold the manifestation of the pre-eternal inscriber who fashions the palace and who writes its program in the notebook